So thanks so much for joining us for this webinar on getting ready for distance learning. We really want to thank Multnomah County Family Caregiver Support Program for their partnership to bring you this presentation today. The information is universal for Oregon, but we really appreciate their partnership. As kinship caregivers, you may be eligible and want to access the services of the Family Support Group program. And the way you can do that is by going to the ADRC of Oregon online, or a phone number that Beth is going to put in the chat for you to call the ADRC, and they'll get you to the best resource in your local area. Okay. So welcome again. I'm Stephanie Hooper, president of Age Plus, and I'm excited to be your host today. Age Plus is an Oregon nonprofit that manages the Ties That Bind program for grandparents raising grandchildren and other kinship caregivers. And if you're not familiar with this resource, we will talk a little bit about it at the end and provide you a link. Today we are so excited and privileged to have Jonathan with us as our featured speaker and expert. Jonathan is the principal at Fairview Elementary and has over 30 years of experience as an educator and principal. And Jonathan, tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, welcome everybody. I was excited to hear about this opportunity to speak with you all. I know what you're heading into is difficult. It's difficult to, I imagine, to be a grandparent raising grandchildren anyway, and with what's happening now, it's got to be harder, so I'm looking forward to those conversations. But a little bit about me. I started my career in Chicago, in the Chicago public schools as a bilingual teacher. I did that there for 7 years before coming to Oregon. I continued work in bilingual education for another 18 years in the Portland public schools, where I left after 2 years as an assistant principal and came out here to East County and the Reynolds School District to be a principal here at Fairview Elementary School. So this is my 6th year, and I did not expect my 6th year here to be what it is. That picture you're seeing there is me with students behind me at an assembly that we had as a groundbreaking ceremony for our brand new building, which I'm sitting in now. And that is a very old looking gymnasium that you're looking at there in our old building, and our students there behind me were getting ready to get up and sing for the celebration that our music teacher wrote a song that they all sang. So it was an exciting time, and we moved from that building into the one I'm now in, and here we are, and I'm ready to go with the rest of the presentation.
Great. So we thought we would start out with some inspiration for the day. COVID has brought tremendous challenges to our communities, to say the least, and we thought we would start out with this frame of mind, that when you can't change the direction of the wind, you adjust your sails. Same with the virus. We can't control the virus. Oop, I went too far. We can't control the virus, but we can control how we react. Distance learning is just the way it's going to be for most school districts this fall. And with this information, we aim to help your families be better prepared. Jonathan and I are going to take turns with the slides, and a reminder, if at any time you have a question, please put it in the chat, because our staff are tracking the questions and we'll address them at the end. We also have a brief survey for you to complete at the end, so please do take a couple minutes to do that. We really appreciate your feedback, and it's critical to our future programming.
So
Let's do this, Jonathan.
Yeah, so this slide, I like the picture, and I think that it gives the right message, because what we have to be thinking of right now is we are now in a time when we are facing the need to shift things in a radical way. I just had a good conversation with some of my colleagues this morning, and it was an odd thing, but we were all kind of thinking, you know, we want this to end, but we don't want the COVID thing to end too fast right now, because this sounds weird, and I know, go with me here. Because it's forcing us into some change that we see some of the change that we're being forced into as positive. Ironically, collaboration between teachers and across schools is now happening in ways that we haven't seen before, because we have to do it. And there's no stepping back into comfort zone anymore, because the comfort zone is gone. It's like our superintendent here said when I said, you know, we kind of need to think outside the box. She goes, no, we don't. There is no box anymore. And so I like this image because it's of a young child who they think that way all the time. To them, whatever is, and you build from there. So that's the attitude that I'm trying to bring and take into this school year, which is, you know, our motto is, can we do this? Of course we can. And we'll figure it out, because we don't really have a choice. And so all of our ideas are good ones. And I do that last bullet there, even if in-person school starts, there's no guarantee it will continue. We also have to keep that in mind. We are working towards figuring out how to open schools again, and we'll get to a slide about the metrics and how that happens. But even with that, we don't know how long that will take place, because if the metrics shift, we could be back into distance learning again. So we are building a system that is very different from the one that we saw in the spring, and we'll talk more about that as well.
So this is one of the metrics that Jonathan mentioned. It's not the school's decision to reopen. There is definitely a process. The governor's office and the Oregon Health Authority have developed a series of metrics that must be achieved for school to open. Or reopen and close and reopen. And those metrics need to also be maintained for a period of time. It's complicated and there are exceptions. So rather than getting into the weeds of these metrics, we really encourage you to look to your local school officials and news for announcements. When changes are made, it'll be all over the news, and we will also post it on the Ties That Bind website. And Jonathan, is there anything else that you want to add to that?
No, not really. Just to echo the sense of uncertainty about the whole thing, and that's just something that we're all going to have to get used to.
So Jonathan and the other principals and districts across Oregon are getting their guidance from the Oregon Department of Education. And they had 4 guiding principles as they set out the guidance. So, and at the top is ensure safety and wellness. The decision to return to school settings has to be driven by health and safety considerations. They've prioritized basic needs such as food, shelter, and wellness to create conditions that support mental, social, and emotional health of students and staff. They know that what we do needs to cultivate connections and relationships. You know, a quality learning experience requires interpersonal relationships and a learning environment where people are seen and known and loved. And especially in the midst of returning to a school setting from a very extended school closure. Third, centered in equity. In Oregon, based on data from OHA, all racial and ethnic groups are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19 as compared to their white peers. They recognize the disproportionate harm and impact of COVID-19 for certain communities, and they're seeking to apply an equitable anti-racist lens to promote the cultures of their students and support them however they can. And lastly, to innovate, which Jonathan mentioned before. The complex circumstances of all of this require ongoing reflection and review of everything, of techniques, policies, tools, all to enhance the learning process.
And I'll just chime in a little bit on the second bullet, cultivating connections and relationships. You're likely to, if your school districts are doing kind of organizing the beginning of the school year the way we are, which I suspect they are because we're all working with the same guidelines. Expect that there will be lots of opportunities that the teachers are pushing out for connection, getting to know one another, social emotional learning lessons, and that academics are going to be embedded in less of an intensive way initially, because we want to spend the time getting to know kids, making sure that families are well connected, that they understand what they need to do, that we are going to be doing things like that, what we're doing right now within our district for parents, and that I lost my train of thought. But anyway, that the children are learning how to use all the different platforms, because all of the districts have embraced some new technologies that we're rapidly learning how to use, and so we want to make sure that that learning is happening here in the district, and it's also happening at home. So there's just a period of time where we're working on that kind of support and easing into a heavier duty academic, because if we jump there too soon, I think people are going to be confused.
That's a great point.
Sorry, I think this is for me to talk about.
Well, I can start while you're looking at your notes. We just want to reiterate how important it is for your school to have your contact information. That is going to be really key to getting help, to getting the right information. So if it has moved back and forth from their parents to you, take the time to call the school and make sure they know how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, we are using the Remind app here in our school, and I think that's fairly common, and I'm finding that it's the best way for me to communicate quickly and with mass communication out to families. So if your district is using some sort of application like that, I encourage you to make sure that you are signed up on it and that your phone number is current in the system, because I can sit at my computer, and if there's an important message that I say, I just put it into the Remind app and I click send, and it goes out to everybody's phone as a text. And links can be provided as well. So for instance, we just are rolling out our first of a series of parent academies here in our district, and the first one is going to be families coming, parents or grandparents, guardians coming with their children to pick up their brand new devices. That every child is going to have a computer device. Teach them, how to use it, open it up, learn what the different apps are, do a little activity together with the children, and then have them learn how to post onto the platform. So that I just sent out a reminder to make sure people, and a link to the sign up page, so that every family would sign up and make an appointment to do that. So those are the kinds of things that we all districts are now doing, and I can't stress enough how important it is for all information to be updated, and especially your email and phone number. We have to have those if we're gonna communicate well. The one thing I also wanted to mention is that it's really important that you know who the principal of the school is and how to contact the principal and the counselor of your school. So know the counselor's name and phone number and how to reach the counselor, and know the principal's name, and because we want to hear from you, and we need to know right away if there are issues that are going on that we can help with.
So what we've also learned is that just about every school got CARES money to make either provide a computer, a device for every student, to help with internet connection, and like Jonathan said, to understand how to use those apps and work within a virtual classroom. So if you don't have a device or you don't have internet, your school has funds to be able to provide those for you. We have new vocabulary, Jonathan.
Yes, we do. So I this slide, let me see. I'm gonna start at the very top. There's sort of to give you all a little bit of a sense of what we've gone through over the summertime. Stephanie was talking about the guidelines that we received. We've gone through 4 versions of those guidelines and they keep evolving. So the most recent evolution was really wanting to make sure that we were articulating what teacher facilitated learning meant. And there's these 2 big terms that you're going to hear. One is synchronous experiences and one is asynchronous experiences. And teacher facilitated learning is learning that incorporates both of those experiences together under the teacher's direct guidance. So, and that's going to be the bulk of the time that the children are spending in school, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the students are going to be sort of in a virtual classroom live with the teacher during all of that time. So for instance, here we have 4+ hours, depending on grade level, of required teacher facilitated learning. But the likelihood that all of that is synchronous is pretty low. It's expecting a lot of children, especially young children, to sit in front of a screen like we are right now and engage with little tiny tiles of faces and learn that way. So what we're learning about best practices is this interplay between the synchronous experiences and asynchronous experiences, where the teacher might bring the children together. Say you're going to be looking at a video. It may not even be of the teacher. It may be of a high quality lesson that they found at Khan Academy or Edutopia or any of the number of different places where there are excellent online lesson videos. And then they will turn the students over to do that, to answer some questions, and then come back to the live group. So that's an example of sort of starting with a synchronous experience, meaning that they're there attending together live with the teacher in real time, switching to an asynchronous experience where they're on their own. They've gotten the directions. They're working on some sort of an assignment there, or they may be in an app with a time that they're told you're going to log back in and we're going to process this together. So teachers are not necessarily delivering direct lessons to students. The students may be listening to those lessons asynchronously, and then teachers are doing much more of a facilitating of conversation and making sure students understand. They do quick then assessments synchronously, find out which students are grasping and which ones aren't. Then they may do smaller breakout rooms for the students that need a little bit more extra support, and the ones who are doing well will go back into an asynchronous time where they're going to work on that on their own. So I hope that kind of helps clarify that for you all, the difference between synchronous and asynchronous.
And just a reminder, if you have questions, put them in the chat while they're fresh, and we will address them at the end. So really, it's going to look different than last spring, Jonathan?
Yes. So last spring we were in crisis mode. We basically had no time at all to prepare. And I'll be honest, it was a mess. All across the nation, suddenly you can't be in school anymore. Your children are going to be exposed to something called distance learning. Families didn't know how to engage in that. Teachers didn't know how to roll it out. We had to scramble to put together platforms that we thought would work. And, in the end, I was pretty proud of my staff. We pivoted very quickly and got started on building classrooms that, where there was pretty good access to good learning. But it was really difficult to get students there and engaged and attending on a regular basis. So a few things that you see there from last spring, we also there wasn't even required. I personally required synchronous contact because the kids needed that, but it wasn't a requirement from the state. Now it is. There's a significant amount of synchronous contact, and there was a pass, no pass. There was no grades. So now we're moving much more towards, we want to recreate school as much as we can, but it's not going to look like traditional school, but there will be things that you will recognize. There will be letter grades. There will be daily lessons that will happen at specific times. Teachers will give you schedules. You will get those from your teachers saying, this is when your children need to log on. We will be, our class meeting for math will start at such and such time, and our class meeting for, the different content areas will start at specific times, which will be different. So you will see very clearly designed schedules coming to you from teachers on when and how to engage. And I think that's pretty much the point.
And if they aren't seeing those schedules come, Jonathan?
If they're not, you need to get a hold of the school. So that's why I say you want to know who the principal is so that you can contact. Well, the first thing you should always do is contact the teacher and say, I haven't gotten a schedule. I'm not sure when I should be logging on. And if you don't get a schedule quickly after school starts, then you need to alert the administrator in the building so that can be fixed, because you're not going to be able to engage if you don't have a schedule. I mean, I'm anticipating all of the parents are going to be hanging them up somewhere in a prominent place in their home and building routines around those schedules that the teachers send. And we will get to a slide later about, setting up routines. But you can't really set up those routines if you don't have the schedules from the teachers.
That's a great segue. We want you to know that you can do this. Older adults are some of the most resilient groups that I know, and you've had such rich lived experience and are doing amazing work raising your grandchildren. We want to remind you to take care of yourselves. Prioritizing your well-being and your outlets for connection are just as important as what you're trying to do for your children. You need a routine just as much as they do. And you need to give yourself, space for when it's just not working, and it's okay to regroup, and how to ask for help. So Jonathan's really practicing this with his staff too.
Yeah, what you just described is what I was working with my staff on. It was the main message that I worked on delivering to my staff this week. Is it's really about our personal wellness. If we don't develop the habits in this difficult time of taking good care of ourselves and each other, we're not going to be able to take care of the children and their families. And that's really why we're here. I mean, we all have sort of got into the profession with sort of the moral imperative to serve children and prepare them to take on the world. And we've got to be models for that. And we also have to recognize that the times that we're living in right now are extremely stressful. And so learning how to structure your life so that it's predictable, so that there are routines, so that you're giving yourself breaks when you need to, that you when the frustration starts to burble up, you have techniques that you have decided that these are mine and I'm going to use them, and when I need to, I'm just going to get up and do the things that I need to do in order to stay centered. I think I talked a little bit before about how important it is for us to now I'm losing my train of thought again. I start going all over, but the need for us to do this for ourselves is extremely important. And so all of my teachers have built personal wellness plans. And I think it's also important then for you to know who it is that you can rely on and lean on in order to kind of help you through the difficult times. I got my train of thought back now. So that idea that we're in a time that is forcing us to do things differently. This is another area that I think that we are poised to do some amazing growth as people, because we have to. And so this is important. Taking really good care of yourselves is the first and most important thing, because you're then going to be able to turn around and do that for your children, and you're going to model for them the kind of people that we need to be to move through this. So one last thing, I had a teacher come to me earlier today and was apologizing. I really don't want to bring all of this to you because I know you're already overwhelmed. And I looked at her and I said, no, I'm not overwhelmed. And she's like, well, I know you have so much to do. I said, yeah, I do, but I've decided that I'm not going to be overwhelmed because there's no utility in it. And I think we can make those kinds of decisions to not be overwhelmed, but it's way easier to stick with a decision like that if you have a plan. So that's really, why I'm stressing how important it is for all of you to think about what is your plan for staying well, staying healthy, staying sane.
Well, and the Ties That Bind program has an online peer support group in Facebook. So that's a great place for you to go to ask questions of other people in your position, vent, brag, and find support from others. So, and your kids can do this.
Yeah, I actually believe that children can probably adapt more quickly and easily than we can, because they, everything's new to them. So it's, this is just what we now need to do. Did you want to go into this slide a little bit? I can't remember how we.
Yeah. Well, I'll just mention a few things.
Yeah.
Obviously having a designated place to study is really important. This picture is a cool, all it is a poster board that you use for presentations that a teacher has taken to, just provide a little shield around so that the child can concentrate a little bit better, and they have everything in front of them they need, reminders and whatnot. So that's just one example of an inexpensive way, if you don't have a dedicated room, to help keep distractions to a minimum. And you really do want to build that schedule for your children. They're not going to be busy all day in front of the computer, and so think about, is your school still offering lunches? Do you need to break up the day and go get lunch? Schedule walks, all of that movement that the kids need, in addition, even more than they do normally.
Yeah, and take advantage of, this is this side, the support. Take advantage of the support that's there to help you with those kinds of things. I know that Stephanie has mentioned a number of different organizations that help with this. It's one thing to look at a slide and see a nice picture of a student with a space there that works well and think, oh yeah, that's great. We'll put together. But you're going to have moments where it all seems to break down and the child has a fit or a tantrum or something's going on, and there are going to be those times that you're going to need to reach out and get some support. I know here at my school we're having, I mentioned that our first parent academy is going to be the get to know your teacher and pick up your computer device, but we're going to continue to have series of them where many of them are going to be just support, lessons, instruction on best practices for how to set up your home environment for distance learning and bringing people in to help with that. And I'm guessing that your districts will have similar opportunities offered to you, so that if that seems to be a struggle at some point and you're like, this isn't working, I'm trying, that I've got a space set up, and it's a very different thing for parents and grandparents to try to run schooling at home than it is for us at school. And everybody, what you used to always say to me when I was a teacher, oh, it's so amazing, I can't even do, I've got 3 of them at home and they're all over the place, and you've got 30 and they're all like doing what they're supposed to do. And my response was always, it's not that it's amazing, it's that I have a much simpler relationship with your child than you do. I'm the teacher and they're my students, and I set up the expectations and we practice them, and they pretty much do the things that I'm asking of them, because that's the relationship of a teacher to a bunch of students, whereas your relationships with your children are extremely complex. There's a lot going on, and that complexity will erupt from time to time as you're trying to do this at home. So the support that's there for you is I can't stress enough how important it is for you to reach out and use it. So that's where every school has a counselor, and the counselors are eager to help you in any way they can. And if they can't directly help you, they are a resource to connect you with all kinds of service. They are our lifeline in a lot of ways in the schools.
And Jonathan, they don't have to have a learning plan to get extra support, right?
No. You're talking about having like an IEP?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, students who are who have qualified for special education services have something called an IEP, an individualized education plan. But no, what I'm talking about is not part of their IEP. This is all students have access to the school counselor, and the school counselor then can put every single parent or grandparent who contacts them in touch with, either be in touch with them and become their support, or in touch with other organizations that are available in the community.
Great. So we have to try and stay positive and find silver linings. Our kids are learning life skills, and so they're resilient. They're learning how to ask questions, communicate in this form, and they know that we're all there for them. So we will take all your questions that you've been putting in the chat box. If you have more, keep them coming. Maybe we could take a minute, Jonathan, to talk about IEPs and what special education will look like. Will it be in person or virtual? My son has an IEP, so I know that some virtual things are just ineffective for kids that need in-person help, and how do families get that?
Yeah, that's a good, and it's a difficult question right now, because here in our district at this point in time, we're basically saying our buildings are sort of in quarantine, and our staff can be in the buildings with masks, but we're not having anybody from the community into the buildings. That could be different in other districts. I don't know. But I know that our special education director and his team are working to build up a plan where families are able to come and begin to meet in person. And the state definitely wants to. That's the whole equity piece. There was a period of time where we were told, you may have seen this in the newspapers. It was, I don't know, maybe a month ago. State okays students to be able to come into the schools for special programming. So the idea being, yes, we're going to bring students in, and then there was some backing off on that. And a lot of that depends on where we are with the pandemic in our region. And so I happen to be in the east part of Multnomah County, where we have very high incidences of COVID-19, and we can't bring students into our buildings at this point with their families, which is extremely unfortunate. But you need to check at your school and in your school district about whether or not that's true there, because it is definitely preferable for students who are have who can't engage virtually to be able to have contact at school. And that is one of the priorities that the state has put out there. As soon as you can, we want you to be able to bring students in small groups into the school for extra service if they need it. And that's part of the equity push that our district, our state is embraced.
Those IEP plans need to be reviewed periodically.
Yeah.
So what's the timeline and process for that?
Well, we had a sort of in the spring, those were reviewed, and I forgot there was a different acronym. They didn't even call them IEP meetings. They called them something else because we couldn't legally call them that because they weren't. So we've, any student who is on an IEP, the resource teacher, meaning that the teacher who has that student on their caseload will be reaching out probably in the first, couple of months or month to the families and scheduling IEP meetings. Those meetings are likely to be done virtually, but those are conversations that have to happen about rebuilding the goals and the activities that they're going to be putting into the IEP in order to meet those student goals this year. That has to be done and has to be done quickly. So if any of you have children on IEPs, you should expect to hear from the resource teacher at your student's school soon. And if you don't, you should call and ask. Advocate for your child. Make sure that those meetings are happening.
And we also saw in the chat box that, maybe having a session just on IEPs would be beneficial. And so we'll look at that.
Yeah. And I would not be the best principal to come along. I would recommend an actual, like a program director within a special ed department. And we have one in particular here that I'm thinking of that I could put you in touch with, Stephanie, because she's phenomenal and a wealth of knowledge.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So thanks for that feedback. That's exactly what we need. We will have these slides and this recording available. Are there other questions? Nothing is, there's no stupid questions. We're handling a lot of information in changing times. Well, it's also a good lead in to, Jonathan, I do see one more question. If they're not the legal guardian, how do they get information from the school?
That's a good question. It's a little hard one to answer without sort of probing for some personal information, which would be inappropriate in a webinar. But sort of generally, you need to present. You have to present yourself to the school, and you have to meet with the principal and tell your story. And the principal will guide you in the best way to proceed. That could be getting somebody to sign a document saying that I'm giving temporary custody of my child to this person for this amount of time, and that may work. I know that's happened here at my school a few times. I've had individuals come in with parents saying, the parents telling me that this is, I can't do it right now. I can't take care of my child, and I'm turning my child over to this person. And then, that allows me then to go through the processes that I need to in order to make that person, that person who has been authorized to have temporary custody, I can put them down as someone who can pick up the child from school. Obviously, in these circumstances, that's not an issue. But the first step is to make an appointment and go in and sit down with the principal.
Great. And Jonathan, I know you can't speak for every school, but what is happening with school lunches? So if people are on free and reduced lunch, do they still come to school to get that lunch?
Yeah, here, yes. Our school is 100% free reduced lunch. So all students get a breakfast and a lunch. So what our kitchen is going to be open. Our cooks will be here. They will be preparing sort of carry away hot lunches, not as nice as the ones they could prepare when they be on trays because they're going to have to fit into bags. And they will have those available for students from 11:30 to 12:30 to come and pick them up. And so we've got we're the Fairview Eagles. I don't know, you can see my son designed this nice shirt of an eagle with a mask on for our fifth graders last year. And so we have little red dots, that our custodian put down with, eagle track on them. So they have to stand on the eagle tracks and not get too close. And so students will be coming to school to get lunch and kind of filing through and getting their lunch, and then they've got to go home. They can't come into the building. But yeah, I have a feeling we'll have lots and lots of kids showing up, and we may end up having to put together a schedule for that as well. Like our kindergartners and first graders come at 11:30, and our second graders and third graders, and then families will freak out because, but I've got a third grader and a kindergartner. And, we'll of course make exceptions for families that have kids at different grades, but I think probably your schools will have to schedule by grade. This grade comes at this time, this grade comes at this time. Who knows? We haven't figured that part out yet, but we will soon. But yes, if your children receive lunch at school, we are obligated to serve them.
And what if they're not eligible for free and reduced? Can they still come and get a lunch?
You can, and if you're not eligible for free and reduced, then you'll have to pay for the lunch. And most of the time, you can pay into an account,
Right.
and then the students can come and they just grab the lunch, and they don't have to. The children should never have to deal with the money part. So
Right.
that's something that you pay, and now it's so easy. You probably just do it all online. You pay online and keep your account current, and then your child gets to come and get a lunch, and nobody knows that your child is paying and another one isn't, except you.
Great. Well, and we will certainly take the special ed question seriously as we plan our future webinars. But we do want you to know that we have the next one planned for the first week in October on social and emotional well-being with distance learning. We anticipate that by then, we're going to be we'll be a month 2-3 weeks into distance learning, and some of those social emotional issues will be popping up, and we want to be there to help you. Let's see. And I mentioned before, if you don't already know about Ties That Bind, it's a resource available for you on your schedule, where there's training, there's news, articles, and resources, and where you can also get connected to that online Facebook group of other grandparents and kinship caregivers caring for kids. So please check out that resource. It's also where this recording and future recordings will be placed. And please don't leave before you fill out the survey of today. Beth's putting that in the chat box if it's not there already. And we just want to really thank and appreciate Jonathan for joining us. This is an incredibly busy, hectic time for him to be taking time to help us. And Jonathan, we're so appreciative and really want to thank you.
You're welcome. And I hope, any words I offered were helpful in some way to people. And I would just close with, enjoy your little ones. This is their childhood, and it's not the childhood that you may have thought they were going to have with in the middle of a pandemic, but they're precious people who, I miss mine. They're grown and gone. And so enjoy them and enjoy the moments, because they are special.
And please do click on the link in the chat box for the survey. It really does help us improve our webinars, make sure we're bringing you the information that you really need and want, and just to continuously support you. Again, we will post this webinar on the Ties That Bind website, and you can always email info@ageplus.org with questions, and we will get back to you just as soon as possible with resources for you. And again, thank you to Multnomah County and the Family Caregiver Support Program. And if you aren't connected to that program, go to your ADRC website, ADRC Oregon, to get connected. Thank you all.
Yep. Thank you all for being here and what you're doing for the little ones.